Canine follows. Child into woods, what he fights off in the trees. Left the family at shock. What happened next will leave you speechless. A retired police dog's instincts kicked in when danger lurked in the shadows, and what he discovered will haunt you forever. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. The story you're about to listen to started on a Tuesday afternoon that felt like any other ordinary day. 5-year-old Tommy was playing in his backyard, swinging a wooden stick like it was the most powerful sword in the world. His blonde hair caught the sunlight as he battled invisible dragons behind the old oak tree. The autumn air carried the sweet smell of fallen leaves, and everything seemed perfect in their small town of Millbrook. But Max knew something was wrong. The retired German shepherd had been lying on the porch, his dark eyes following Tommy's every move. Max's ears suddenly shot up like antennas, picking up a dangerous signal. His body went rigid. A low growl escaped his throat, so quiet that most people wouldn't have noticed. But this wasn't just any dog. This was a Canine who had spent 8 years protecting the streets with Tommy's father. Tommy stopped mid-swing and looked at Max. "What's wrong, boy?" Max stood up slowly, his nose twitching in the air. Something was out there, something that didn't belong in their peaceful backyard. The dog's training kicked in immediately. Every muscle in his body tensed as he sniffed the breeze coming from the dense woods behind their house. Then Tommy did something that would change everything. The little boy dropped his stick and started walking toward the trees. Not running, not skipping like kids usually do, just walking with that curious, fearless way children have when they sense adventure. Max's ears flattened against his head. His instincts screamed danger, but his loyalty to Tommy was stronger than his fear. Without a sound, Max bolted after the boy. Inside the house, Sarah was washing dishes at the kitchen sink. She was a nurse at the local hospital, and exhaustion clung to her shoulders like a heavy blanket. The past 6 months had been the hardest of her life. Every day felt like climbing a mountain with no peak in sight. She glanced out the window, expecting to see Tommy playing with his sword, but the backyard was empty. "Tommy," she called out, drying her hands on a dish towel. Silence. Sarah walked to the back door and stepped onto the porch. The wooden boards creaked under her feet. "Tommy, where are you?" Still no answer. Her heart started beating faster. Tommy never wandered far. He was a quiet child, especially after... She pushed that thought away. No need to panic yet. "Max!" she called, noticing the dog was gone too. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, Sarah thought she heard something. A bark? A voice? She couldn't tell. She walked to the edge of their property, where the manicured grass met the wild. Forest floor, the woods stretched on for miles, thick and dark even in the afternoon sunlight. That's when she saw it. Tommy's wooden sword was stuck in the dirt like a tiny gravestone. The sight hit her like a punch to the stomach. Tommy never left his sword behind. Never. It was his most prized possession, the one thing that made him feel brave since his father died. "Tommy!" Sarah screamed, her voice echoing through the trees. "Tommy, come back!" But the forest swallowed her words, giving nothing back but silence. Sarah ran back to the house and grabbed her phone with shaking fingers. Her mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Tommy was only 5. He could get lost easily. He could fall and hurt himself. He could... She stopped herself before her thoughts went to darker places. The phone rang 3 times before someone answered. 911? What's your emergency? "My son is missing," Sarah said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "He's 5 years old, and he wandered into the woods behind our house. I need help." "Ma'am, how long has he been missing?" Sarah looked at the clock. Had it been 5 minutes? 10? Time felt strange, like it was moving too fast and too slow at the same time. "I'm not sure. Maybe 15 minutes. Our dog is with him." "What's your address?" 1247 Pine Street in Millbrook. Please hurry. "We're sending units right away. Can you describe what your son was wearing?" "Blue jeans and a red t-shirt. He has blonde hair and blue eyes. His name is Tommy." Her voice cracked on his name. "And the dog?" "Max. He's a German shepherd. He's trained. He was a police dog." Sarah felt a tiny spark of hope saying those words. If anyone could protect Tommy, it was Max. "That's good, ma'am. Police dogs have strong protective instincts. Try to stay calm, we'll find them. But Sarah was already running toward the woods before the operator finished speaking. The trees closed around her like a living wall. Branches caught her hair and scratched her arms, but she didn't care. She called Tommy's name over and over until her throat felt raw. The deeper she went, the quieter the world became. No birds singing, no wind rustling leaves, just the sound of her own breathing and footsteps on the forest floor. "Max!" she shouted. "Come here, boy." Somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard barking, faint, but definitely there. Sarah ran toward the sound, stumbling over roots and pushing through thick bushes. Thorns tore at her nurse's scrubs, but she didn't slow down. The barking stopped. Sarah froze, listening with every fiber of her being. Nothing. The silence felt heavy, like the forest was holding its breath. She pulled out her phone to check the time, but there was no signal. The trees were too thick, blocking everything from the outside world. That's when she realized how far she'd gone. She couldn't see her house anymore. Couldn't even remember which direction she'd come from. Panic started creeping up her, throat like cold water. What if she got lost too? What if she couldn't find her way back? What if rescuers came and couldn't find any of them? "Think, Sarah," she whispered to herself. "Think like Max would think." She closed her eyes and tried to remember everything her husband had taught her about Max's training. Police dogs follow scents. They track suspects through the worst conditions. They never give up. Max wouldn't abandon Tommy. He'd stay close, protecting him until help arrived. But protecting him from what? Sarah opened her eyes and really looked at the woods for the first time. This wasn't the friendly forest she'd imagined from her backyard. The trees grew so thick that sunlight barely touched the ground. Fallen logs created perfect hiding spots for wild animals. Creek beds ran through deep gullies where someone could easily fall and get hurt. And then there were the stories. Sarah had heard whispers around town about these woods. Old-timers talked about strange things happening back in the deep areas, missing hikers, weird sounds at night. But those were just stories, weren't they? Small towns always had legends that grew bigger with each telling. A twig snapped behind her. Sarah spun around, her heart hammering. "Tommy, is that you, baby?" Nothing moved, but something felt wrong. She had the strangest feeling that she was being watched. Her nurse's training had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now, every instinct was screaming danger. As she started backing away, step by careful step, when she heard it again. Barking. But this time, it wasn't the playful bark of a dog having fun. This was Max's warning bark, the sound he made when he sensed a threat, sharp, urgent, desperate. And mixed with the barking, Sarah heard something that made her blood run cold. Tommy was crying. Not the normal crying of a scared child. This was different. Muffled, like something was covering his mouth, or like he was trying not to make noise. Sarah ran toward the sound, crashing through branches and leaping over fallen trees. She didn't care about scratches or torn clothes or anything else. Her baby needed her. The barking got louder, more frantic. Max was fighting something. She could hear the growling, the snapping of teeth, the sound of claws scraping against bark. "I'm coming, Tommy!" she shouted. "Mommy's coming!" But even as she ran, a terrible thought crept into her mind. What if she was too late? What if whatever Max was fighting was stronger than him? What if her 5-year-old son was facing something in these woods that no child should ever have to face? The crying stopped. The barking stopped. The entire forest went silent. Sarah kept running, tears streaming down her face, following a path she couldn't see toward a destination she was terrified to reach. Because deep down, she knew that whatever waited for her in those woods would change their lives forever. The silence stretched on like a held breath. Sarah stumbled through the thick underbrush, her legs shaking from exhaustion and fear. She'd been searching for what felt like hours, but her phone was dead now, so she couldn't tell how much time had actually passed. The forest seemed to shift around her, paths appearing and disappearing like cruel tricks. "Tommy!" she called again, her voice hoarse and cracking. "Max!" Nothing. Not even the sound of wind through the leaves. Sarah stopped and pressed her back against a large pine tree, trying to catch her breath. Her nurse's scrubs were torn in 3 places, and blood from scratches dotted her arms like a connect-the-dots puzzle. She closed her eyes and tried to think clearly. Where would a 5-year-old go? Tommy wasn't adventurous like other kids his age. Since his father's death, he'd become quiet, careful, almost timid. He wouldn't wander far on his own. But Max would follow a scent. Max would track something. But track what? A branch cracked somewhere to her left. Sarah's eyes snapped open and she held her breath. Another crack, then another. Something was moving through the woods, and it was big enough to break branches under its weight. "Tommy," she whispered. The footsteps stopped. Sarah waited, every muscle in her body tense. She counted her heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. Still nothing. Maybe it was just a deer. Or maybe... Help! The word was so quiet she almost missed it. But it was definitely there. A small voice, barely more than a whisper, coming from somewhere ahead. "Tommy!" Sarah pushed off from the tree and ran toward the sound. "Baby, where are you?" She crashed through a wall of thick bushes and found herself in a small clearing. The ground here was different, darker, like it had been burned long ago. In the center of the clearing stood the remains of an old stone foundation, covered in moss and dead vines. And there, sitting on one of the broken stone walls, was Max. The German shepherd was panting heavily, his tongue hanging out. His dark fur was matted with something that looked like blood, but he was alive. When he saw Sarah, his tail gave one weak wag. "Max!" Sarah ran to him and threw her arms around his neck. "Oh God, where's Tommy?" "Where is he?" Max whined and struggled to stand. He was hurt worse than Sarah had first thought. There were deep scratches along his side, and he was favoring his left front paw. But his eyes were alert, focused. He looked at Sarah, then looked back toward the trees behind the old foundation. "He's back there?" Sarah asked. Max barked once, a sharp, clear sound that meant yes in his training. Sarah looked where Max was pointing and felt her heart sink. The trees behind the foundation were even thicker than the ones she'd already come through. They grew so close together that they formed an almost solid wall of green. How could Tommy have gotten through there, unless someone had carried him? The thought hit Sarah like ice water. What if Tommy hadn't wandered into the woods on his own? What if someone had taken him? The scratches on Max, the way he was protecting something, the strange silence in the forest. It all pointed to one terrible possibility. Someone was out here. Someone who didn't belong. Max struggled to his feet and started limping toward the wall of trees. Every few steps, he'd look back at Sarah, making sure she was following. His police training was still strong even after retirement. He had a job to do, and he was going to finish it. "Okay, boy," Sarah said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Lead the way." They squeezed between two large oak trees and entered what felt like a different world. The air was cooler here, and it smelled strange. Not the clean smell of forest and leaves, but something else. Something that reminded Sarah of the hospital basement where they kept old equipment, musty, damp, wrong. Max moved slowly, but with purpose. He knew exactly where he was going. Sarah followed, pushing branches out of her way and trying not to think about all the horrible possibilities running through her mind. After what felt like forever, they reached another small clearing. This one was different from the first. Instead of burned ground, there was a depression in the earth, like someone had dug a large hole and then covered it with branches and leaves. Next to the depression was a pile of old boards and what looked like a metal door, half buried in the dirt. Max walked to the edge of the depression and barked once. Sarah approached carefully and looked down. The hole was deeper than she'd expected, maybe 8 feet down, and at the bottom... Oh my God! Tommy was there, curled up in a ball in the corner of what looked like an old root cellar. He was alive. Sarah could see him breathing, but he wasn't moving. His red t-shirt was dirty, and there were tear stains on his cheeks. "Tommy," Sarah called down. "Baby, are you okay?" Tommy's head lifted slowly. When he saw his mother, his eyes went wide. But instead of calling for help or reaching up, he pressed himself further back into the corner and put his finger to his lips. "Be quiet." Sarah's blood turned to ice. Tommy was telling her to be quiet, which meant... A hand grabbed her shoulder. "You shouldn't be here." Sarah spun around and found herself face to face with a man she'd never seen before. He was tall and thin, with gray hair and clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in months. His eyes were the worst part. They were pale blue, almost white, and they stared at Sarah like she was something he was deciding whether to keep or throw away. "Where's my son?" Sarah demanded, surprised by the strength in her own voice. The man smiled, showing teeth that were yellowed and broken. "Safe, for now." Max growled low in his throat and positioned himself between Sarah and the stranger. Even injured, the dog was ready to fight. "I know you," the man said, ignoring Max completely. "You're the nurse from town, Sarah Chen. Your husband was the police officer with the dog." Sarah's heart stopped. How did this man know about David? How did he know their names? "David's been dead for 6 months, she said carefully. "I know." The man's smile got wider. "I was at the funeral, stood in the back. Nobody noticed me. Nobody ever notices me." The pieces started falling into place in Sarah's mind, and she didn't like the picture they were forming. This man had been watching them, watching her family, watching Tommy. "What do you want?" Sarah asked. "Company," the man said simply. "Gets lonely out here. Your boy's been good company, but he's too quiet, doesn't talk much. He's 5 years old. He's scared. He should be scared, but not of me. I'm not the dangerous one." Max's growling got louder. The dog was tensing up, getting ready to attack. Sarah could feel the violence building in the air like electricity before a storm. "Who are you?" Sarah asked. "Name's Carl Brennan. Used to live in town, before the fire, before everyone decided I was dead." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Turns out being dead is pretty convenient. Nobody looks for dead people." Sarah remembered the name now. Carl Brennan. There had been a house fire about 30 years ago, before she'd moved to Millbrook. An old man had died in the flames, or so everyone thought. The house had been deep in these same woods. "You've been living out here for 30 years?" Sarah asked. "Time moves different in the woods. Could be 30 years, could be 300, doesn't matter." Carl's pale eyes shifted to Max. "Your dog hurt me earlier, bit my arm when I was bringing the boy down to his new home. I don't like being hurt." Sarah saw Carl's right arm now. It was wrapped in dirty cloth, and dark stains showed through the fabric. Max had fought hard to protect Tommy. "Let him go," Sarah said. "Take me instead." Carl laughed again. "Why would I want just one when I can have both, mother and son, like a real family?" That's when Sarah realized the truth. Carl hadn't just taken Tommy on impulse. This had been planned. He'd been watching them, learning their routines, waiting for the right moment, and he didn't plan to let either of them go. "You can't keep us here," Sarah said. "People will look for us. The police are already searching." "Let them search. They've been searching these woods for 30 years, looking for missing hikers and campers. Never found any of them." Carl's smile turned cruel. "I'm very good at hiding things." Max barked once, sharp and commanding. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He jumped. The big German shepherd launched himself directly at Carl, 65 pounds of muscle and fury, moving like a black and tan missile. His police training kicked in completely. This was a threat to his family, and Max knew exactly what to do about threats. Carl screamed and went down hard, with Max on top of him. The two of them rolled across the forest floor, Carl trying to push the dog away while Max went for his throat. "Run!" Sarah shouted, down to Tommy. "Climb up, baby!" But Tommy was already moving. Despite being only 5 years old, he was scrambling up the dirt walls of the root cellar like a little monkey. Fear had given him strength he didn't know he had. Carl managed to get one hand around Max's throat and squeezed. The dog's bark turned into a choking sound, but he didn't let go of Carl's arm. If anything, he bit down harder. Sarah grabbed a thick branch from the ground and swung it at Carl's head. The impact made a sound like a baseball bat hitting a watermelon. Carl's grip on Max loosened, and the dog rolled away, gasping. Tommy reached the top of the root cellar and grabbed onto Sarah's leg. She picked him up with one arm, keeping the branch ready in the other hand. "Are you hurt?" she asked Tommy quickly. Tommy shook his head, but Sarah could see the terror in his eyes. Her little boy had been through something no child should ever experience. Carl was getting back to his feet, blood running down the side of his head. But instead of looking angry, he looked excited. "This is fun," he said, wiping blood from his mouth. "It's been so long since I had a real challenge." Max tried to stand but stumbled. The fight had taken everything out of him. Sarah realized with growing horror that they were on their own now. "Tommy," she whispered to her son, "when I say run, you run as fast as you can toward home. Don't stop. Don't look back. Just run. What about you? Tommy whispered back. They were the first words he'd spoken since his father's funeral. Sarah's heart broke and filled with pride at the same time. Her little boy had found his voice again, even in the middle of this nightmare. I'll be right behind you, she lied. Carl was walking toward them now, moving slowly like he had all the time in the world. In his hand was a knife that Sarah hadn't seen before. It was old and rusty, but the blade looked sharp enough. Nobody has to get hurt, Carl said. Just come with me, both of you. We'll be a family. We already are a family, Sarah said. She looked down at Max, who was struggling to stand. The brave dog met her eyes, and somehow she knew he understood. He had one more fight left in him. Sarah raised the branch like a baseball bat. Tommy, get ready. Carl lunged forward with the knife. Max found the strength to leap one more time. And somewhere in the distance, Sarah heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Sirens. What do you think Carl's real plan was for Tommy and Sarah? Drop your theories in the comments below. The sirens were getting closer, but not fast enough. Carl's knife sliced through the air where Sarah's head had been a second before. She stumbled backward, clutching Tommy against her chest, while Max threw himself at Carl's legs. The old man went down hard, cursing and swinging the knife wildly. Max yelped as the blade caught his shoulder, but the brave dog didn't back down. He grabbed Carl's wrist in his powerful jaws and held on like his life. She depended on it. Run, Sarah! A voice shouted from the trees. Sarah spun around and saw a man in a park ranger uniform pushing through the branches. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with kind eyes and a face she almost recognized. This way, the ranger called, pulling out a radio. I've got them! Section 7, near the old Brennan property. Sarah didn't need to be told twice. She ran toward the ranger, Tommy's arms wrapped tight around her neck. Behind them, Carl was screaming curses that made her skin crawl. Jake Morrison, the ranger said as Sarah reached him. I knew your husband. Sarah's heart jumped. David had mentioned Jake before. They'd worked together on search and rescue operations in these woods. Is that really Carl Brennan? Sarah gasped. Jake's face went dark. Yeah. We've been looking for him for 3 decades. Thought he died in that house fire, but... He looked back at where Max was still fighting Carl. Your dog might have just solved the biggest cold case in county history. The sirens were much closer now. Through the trees, Sarah could see flashing red and blue lights, but Carl wasn't giving up. He'd managed to get the knife away from Max and was back on his feet. Nobody leaves! Carl screamed. You're all mine now! Jake stepped in front of Sarah and Tommy, his hand moving to the gun on his belt. Carl, it's over. The police are here. Surrender now? Carl laughed, that same horrible sound Sarah had heard before. Police? I've been hiding from police for 30 years. They can't catch a dead man. You're not dead, Carl, and you're not getting away this time. That's when Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. Max had stopped fighting. The brave German shepherd was lying on his side, breathing hard, and there was too much blood on the ground around him. Max! Tommy cried out. The little boy struggled to get down from Sarah's arms, but she held him tight. Carl's pale eyes locked onto Tommy, and his grip on the knife tightened. The boy stays with me, Carl said. He's been good company, very quiet, very obedient. Jake drew his gun. Step away from them, Carl. You won't shoot. Too many trees, too much risk of hitting the woman or the child. Carl's broken smile returned. I know how these things work. The sound of boots crashing through the forest was getting louder. The police were close, but Sarah could tell they were still searching, trying to find the right path through the thick woods. Over here! Jake shouted. We need medical. Carl took a step towards Sarah and Tommy. Medical won't help. Not where I'm taking them. That's when Jake did something unexpected. Instead of focusing on Carl, he whistled sharply. Max's head lifted slightly at the sound. Attack! Jake commanded, using the same tone David used to use during Max's training. Even wounded and exhausted, Max responded to the command. The old police dog found the strength to surge forward one more time. He didn't go for Carl's legs or arms. He went straight for the hand holding the knife. Carl screamed as Max's teeth clamped down on his wrist. The knife went flying, landing somewhere in the thick undergrowth. Jake moved fast. He holstered his gun and tackled Carl while the old man was distracted by Max. The two men went down in a tangle of arms and legs, but Jake was younger and stronger. Within seconds, he had Carl pinned face down on the forest floor. "Sarah, there's zip ties in my belt," Jake called out. "Back pocket." Sarah set Tommy down carefully and grabbed the plastic restraints. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold them, but she managed to help Jake secure Carl's wrists behind his back. "It's over," Jake said, breathing hard. "It's finally over." But Carl wasn't done talking. Even with his face pressed into the dirt, he kept speaking in that horrible, calm voice. "You think this is over? I've been watching that boy for months, watching the mother too. I know where they live, I know their routines, I know when they're alone." Sarah felt sick. "You've been stalking us?" "Learning about you, planning. This was supposed to be different, cleaner." Carl tried to turn his head to look at Tommy. The boy was supposed to come willingly. Children usually do, when you know the right words to say. Jake pressed Carl's face back down into the dirt. "Shut up!" But Carl kept talking. "Ask him about the other children. Ask him about the missing hikers. Ask him about the campers who never came home." The police finally broke through the tree line. 6 officers in tactical gear, followed by paramedics carrying medical bags and a stretcher. Sarah had never been so happy to see uniforms in her life. "Ma'am, are you injured?" one of the paramedics asked. Sarah shook her head, then pointed to Max. "But he is. He saved us. He saved my son." Tommy had run to Max and was kneeling beside the dog, his small hands gently touching Max's fur. "It's okay, boy. The bad man can't hurt us anymore." The paramedic knelt beside Max and began examining his wounds. "He's lost some blood, but these look worse than they are. He's a tough old guy." One of the police officers was taking pictures of the scene, while another was reading Carl his rights. Sarah watched as they lifted the old man to his feet. Even in handcuffs, there was something about Carl that made her skin crawl. "Mrs. Chen?" A detective in a plain-clothes suit approached her. "I'm Detective Rodriguez. We need to ask you some questions, but first, are you sure you and your son are okay?" "We're fine. Scared, but fine." Sarah pulled Tommy close to her. "How did you find us so fast?" "Your 911 call gave us a starting point, and Ranger Morrison knows these woods better than anyone. When he heard about a missing child, he remembered the old stories about this area. Jake was helping the paramedics get Max onto a makeshift stretcher. We've had disappearances in this section of the woods going back 30 years. Hikers, campers, even some local kids, but we never had proof that someone was taking them." "Until now," Detective Rodriguez said. "Carl Brennan was declared dead in 1994 after his house burned down, but we never found a body." Sarah looked at the old root cellar where they'd found Tommy. "He's been living out here all this time?" "Looks like it. We'll need to do a full investigation of the area. If Carl's telling the truth about other victims..." The detective's voice trailed off. Tommy tugged on Sarah's shirt. "Mommy, is Max going to be okay?" The paramedic treating Max looked up and smiled. "He's going to be fine, kiddo. He's one brave dog." But Sarah could see the worry in the man's eyes. Max was old, and he'd lost a lot of blood. The fight with Carl had taken everything out of him. "Can we ride with him to the vet?" Sarah asked. "Actually," Jake said, "there's something you should know about Max. After your husband died, the department retired him, but they kept paying for his medical care. He's still technically a working police dog. That means he gets the best treatment available." Sarah felt tears starting again, but these were different tears. David had made sure Max would be taken care of, even after he was gone. As they walked back through the woods toward the waiting ambulances and police cars, Sarah found herself looking over her shoulder. Even with Carl in custody, the forest still felt dangerous. Too many shadows, too many places to hide. "The woods will feel different now," Jake said, noticing her unease. "But they'll feel safer too, once word gets out that Carl's been caught." "How many people do you think he..." Sarah couldn't finish the question. "We don't know yet. Could be a few, could be more." Jake's jaw tightened. "But thanks to Max and Tommy, we'll finally get answers." When they reached the edge of the woods, Sarah was amazed by how many people were there. Police cars, ambulances, fire trucks, and what looked like half the town of Millbrook. News crews were setting up cameras, and she could see neighbors and friends scanning the crowd, looking for her and Tommy. "Mommy," Tommy said quietly, "I don't want to talk to all those people." Sarah understood. Her little boy had been through enough for one day. "We don't have to, baby. We'll just go home." But Detective Rodriguez overheard. "Mrs. Chen, we really do need to get statements from both of you while the details are fresh. And Tommy might have seen things that could help us understand what Carl's been doing out there." Sarah was about to argue when Tommy surprised her. "I'll talk," he said in his small voice. "If it helps catch bad people, I'll talk." Sarah's heart swelled with pride. Her 5-year-old son had found courage she didn't know he possessed. The next few hours were a blur of questions, medical exams, and paperwork. Tommy told the police about waking up in the dark root cellar, about Carl bringing him food and water, about the scary stories Carl had told him about other children who had visited the woods. The most chilling detail came when Tommy described drawings on the walls of the underground room, drawings that looked like they'd been made by different children over many years. He said they were pictures from his other friends, Tommy told Detective Rodriguez, but he said his friends had to go away because they weren't good listeners like me. Sarah had to leave the room when Tommy said that. The thought of what might have happened to her son, what had happened to other children, was too much to bear. Jake found her sitting on a bench outside the police station, staring at nothing. "Your boy's stronger than you think," he said, sitting down beside her. "He shouldn't have to be strong. He's 5 years old. He should be worried about toys and cartoons, not—" Sarah's voice broke. "But he is strong, and he's safe, and Carl Brennan will never hurt another child." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set behind the trees, those same trees that had seemed so threatening just hours before. "David would be proud," Jake said eventually. "Of Tommy? Of both of you, and of Max." Jake's radio crackled, and he listened to the message. His face grew serious. "Sarah, there's something else? The search teams found Carl's camp deeper in the woods. They found evidence, a lot of evidence." Sarah didn't want to know the details, but she had to ask. "How bad?" "Bad enough that this is going to be national news. Carl Brennan might be one of the worst serial killers in state history." The weight of that statement hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her son had been in the hands of a monster, and only Max's instincts and loyalty had saved him. "The FBI is sending a team," Jake continued. "This is going to be big, Sarah. Media attention, investigators, maybe even book deals and movie offers. You need to be prepared for that." Sarah thought about that for a moment. "Will it help catch other people like Carl?" "Probably." "Then we'll deal with it." Sarah stood up, feeling stronger than she had in months. "Tommy and I, will deal with whatever comes next." Through the police station window, she could see her son talking with a child psychologist, using crayons to draw pictures of his experience. He looked scared but determined, just like his father had been, just like Max, just like the family they were going to continue being, no matter what the future held. What other evidence do you think the police found at Carl's camp? Share your thoughts below. 3 days later, Sarah sat in the waiting room of the Millbrook Veterinary Hospital, holding Tommy's hand while they waited for news about Max. The brave German Shepherd had been in surgery for 2 hours, and every minute felt like forever. Tommy swung his legs from the plastic chair, a habit he'd picked up since they'd escaped from the woods. The child psychologist said it was normal, his body's way of dealing with the trauma. At least he was talking now. In fact, he'd barely stopped talking since that first word in the police station. "Do you think Max knows we're here?" Tommy asked for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "I think he knows we love him," Sarah answered, squeezing her son's hand. The past 3 days had been a whirlwind of activity. FBI agents had arrived from the state capitol, turning the small town of Millbrook into something that looked like a crime scene from a TV show. News vans lined the streets, reporters knocked on doors, and everyone wanted to interview the hero dog and the family he'd saved. Sarah had turned them all down. She wasn't ready to relive those terrifying moments in the woods, not yet. Maybe not ever, but the FBI had been different. They'd been respectful, patient, and most importantly, they'd helped Sarah understand just how close she and Tommy had come to disappearing forever. Agent Patricia Mills, a specialist in serial crime cases, had shown Sarah photographs of what they had found at Carl's camp. Sarah had only looked at a few before asking them to stop. Personal items from victims going back 30 years, clothing, jewelry, identification cards, and worse things that Sarah tried not to think about. "We estimate at least 15 victims," Agent Mills had explained. "Maybe more. Carl Brennan wasn't just hiding in those woods. he was hunting. The most disturbing discovery had been Carl's journals, page after page of observations about potential victims. Their routines, their families, their vulnerabilities. Sarah's name appeared in entries going back 6 months, right after David's funeral. "He saw you as an opportunity," Agent Mills had said gently. "A single mother, grieving, isolated. In his mind, you and Tommy would be easier to control." But Carl had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated Max. "Mrs. Chen?" Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the veterinarian, emerged from the surgical suite with tired eyes but a small smile. "Max is out of surgery. He's going to be fine." Sarah felt her knees go weak with relief. Tommy jumped up from his chair and grabbed the doctor's arm. "Can we see him? Is he awake? Does he hurt?" Dr. Harper knelt down to Tommy's level. "He's sleeping right now, but you can see him. He's been asking for you." "Dogs can't ask for people," Tommy said seriously. "This one can," Dr. Harper said with a wink. "He's been whining and looking at the door every time someone walks by. I think he knows his family is here." They followed Dr. Harper through a hallway that smelled like disinfectant and dog shampoo. In the recovery room, Max lay on a soft blue blanket, his side wrapped in white bandages. An IV line ran from his front leg to a bag of fluids hanging on a metal stand. Tommy approached the sleeping dog carefully. "Max?" "It's me." Max's eyes opened slowly. When he saw Tommy, his tail gave a weak but unmistakable wag. "Hey, boy," Sarah said, kneeling beside the recovery bed. "You did good. You did so good." Max lifted his head slightly and licked Sarah's hand. His dark eyes were alert and focused, just like they'd been in the woods when he'd protected her family from a monster. "The wounds are healing well, Doctor," Harper explained. "No major damage to muscles or organs. He lost some blood, but he's strong. Police dogs are bred for resilience." "When can he come home?" Tommy asked. "Tomorrow, if he keeps improving. But he'll need to take it easy for a while. No running, no rough play. Just rest and gentle walks until he's fully healed." Sarah nodded, but inside she was thinking about something else entirely. Max had saved their lives, but what happened next? David was gone. Max was retired. Their little family had been through hell and somehow survived. But what did the future look like? That evening, after Tommy had fallen asleep, Sarah sat on her back porch looking at the woods behind their house. The same woods where Carl Brennan had hunted for 30 years. The same trees that had hidden unspeakable horrors from the world. But they looked different now. The FBI had finished their investigation 2 days ago. They'd found Carl's main camp, his storage areas, and what Agent Mills had grimly referred to as disposal sites. The woods were no longer a hunting ground. They were just woods again. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text message from Jake Morrison. "Saw the news about Max's surgery. How's he doing?" Sarah typed back, "Good, coming home tomorrow. Mind if I stop by this weekend? Have something that might interest you and Tommy." Sarah stared at the message. She and Jake had talked several times since the rescue, but always about official business. Police reports, FBI interviews, victim statements. This felt different. "Sure, Tommy would love to see you." "Great, Saturday around 2. See you then?" Sarah put her phone down and continued staring at the woods. A month ago, they'd seemed like a magical place where Tommy could play and explore. Then they'd become a nightmare. Now, she wasn't sure what they were. Saturday afternoon arrived with perfect autumn weather. The leaves were changing colors, painting the forest in reds and golds that made it look like something from a fairy tale. Max was home and recovering well, though he spent most of his time lying on his favorite blanket by the window, where he could watch the backyard. Tommy was playing with his wooden sword again, but he stayed close to the house now. The fearless exploration that had gotten him into trouble was gone, replaced by a more cautious approach to the world. Sarah was folding laundry when she heard Jake's truck pull into the driveway. Tommy ran to the window and pressed his nose against the glass. "It's Ranger Jake," Tommy announced. "And he's got something in the back of his truck." Sarah walked outside to greet Jake, curious about what he'd brought. In the bed of his pickup truck was a large wooden sign, professionally made and painted. "What's that?" Sarah asked. Jake grinned and lifted the sign so she could read. "Itty's Max Memorial Trail, in honor of Canine, Max Chen, hero dog of Millbrook." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Jake, that's beautiful, but Max isn't dead? No, thank God. But he's retired from active duty, and the town council thought he deserved recognition. This trail, Jake gestured toward the woods, is going to be cleaned up, marked, and turned into a safe hiking path. Families will be able to enjoy these woods the way they were meant to be enjoyed. Tommy had come outside and was staring at the sign with wide eyes. That says Max's name. That's right, buddy. Your dog is going to be famous. People will come from all over to walk the Max Memorial Trail and learn about the brave police dog who saved his family. Will there be a statue? Tommy asked seriously. Jake laughed. Actually, yes. The town raised money for a bronze statue of Max to go at the trailhead. It should be finished by Christmas. Sarah was overwhelmed. This is too much. We don't need... The town needs it, Jake interrupted gently. What happened in these woods was terrible, but what Max did was heroic. People need heroes, Sarah, especially after something like this. They spent the afternoon working together to install the sign at the edge of the woods. Tommy helped by holding tools and asking a million questions about everything. Max supervised from his blanket on the porch, his tail wagging whenever Tommy got too close to the forest. As the sun began to set, Jake packed up his tools and prepared to leave, but before getting in his truck, he pulled Sarah aside. "There's something else," he said quietly. "The FBI finished processing Carl's journals yesterday. They found entries about other families he was watching, other potential victims." Sarah felt her stomach clench. "Are they safe?" "They are now. But Sarah, you should know, Carl had detailed plans for you and Tommy, very detailed. If Max hadn't intervened when he did..." Jake's voice trailed off. "How detailed?" Sarah asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "He'd been in your house." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "What?" "While you were at work and Tommy was at daycare. He'd made copies of your keys somehow. The FBI found photos of the inside of your house, taken from different angles. He knew your routines better than you did." Sarah sat down heavily on her porch steps. The violation felt almost worse than what had happened in the woods. Her home, the place where she and Tommy were supposed to be safe, had been invaded by a monster. "The locks have been changed," Jake continued. "The FBI took care of that yesterday. And they're recommending a security system." "What else?" Sarah asked, because she could tell there was more. "Carl had a timeline. He was planning to take Tommy first, then wait for you to come looking for him. The root cellar where you found Tommy, that wasn't where he usually kept his victims. It was bait." Sarah's blood turned to ice. "Bait?" "He wanted you to find Tommy. There. He wanted you to come into the woods alone and scared. Then he would have taken both of you to his real hiding place, deeper in the forest where nobody would ever find you." The full horror of Carl's plan began to sink in. Every detail had been calculated. The timing, the location, even Max's likely response. Carl had studied their family like a scientist studying lab rats. "But he didn't count on Max being smarter than him," Jake said. "Your dog didn't just react to danger, he outsmarted a predator who'd been hunting for 30 years. Tommy appeared at Sarah's side, having overheard part of the conversation. "Max is the smartest dog in the world," he said matter-of-factly. "Yes, he is," Jake agreed. "And the bravest." After Jake left, Sarah called Tommy inside and locked the door behind them. The new locks felt foreign under her fingers, but they also felt stronger than the old ones. "Mommy, are you scared?" Tommy asked as they got ready for bed. Sarah considered lying, but decided her son deserved honesty. "A little bit, but not as scared as I was before." "Because Max is here? Because we're all here, and because the bad man is gone forever." Tommy nodded seriously. "In jail forever and ever? Forever and ever." That night, Sarah lay in bed listening to the sounds of her house, the heater clicking on, the refrigerator humming, normal sounds that she'd never paid attention to before. But now she also listened for sounds that didn't belong. Around midnight, she heard Max get up from his bed in the living room. His claws clicked across the hardwood floor as he made his way to Tommy's room. Sarah heard Tommy's door creak open, then silence. She got up quietly and peeked into Tommy's room. Max was lying on the floor beside Tommy's bed, his head resting on his paws, but his eyes alert and watchful. "Good boy," Sarah whispered. Max's tail thumped once against the floor, but he didn't move from his post. Sarah went back to her own bed, feeling safer than she had in days. Max was hurt, but healing. Carl Brennan was locked away forever. The woods behind their house were going to become a place of honor instead of horror, but as she drifted off to sleep, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their story wasn't over yet. Something about Carl's calm demeanor during his arrest, the way he'd smiled when they'd put him in the police car, suggested he had one more surprise waiting. She was right. The call came at 6:47 a.m. on Sunday morning. Sarah answered her phone without looking at the caller ID, expecting it to be her mother checking on Tommy. Instead, it was Detective Rodriguez, and his voice was tense. "Sarah, I need you to listen carefully. Carl Brennan escaped from county jail 3 hours ago. Do you think Carl is coming back for Tommy and Sarah? Or does he have a different plan? Tell us what you think." Sarah's phone slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. The words echoed in her mind like a nightmare that wouldn't end. Carl Brennan, escaped from county jail 3 hours ago. "Sarah? Sarah, are you there?" Detective Rodriguez's voice came from the phone on the floor. She picked it up with shaking hands. "How? How did he escape?" "We're still investigating, but it looks like he had help. Someone on the inside. Sarah, you and Tommy need to get out of your house right now." Sarah was already moving, running to Tommy's room, where her son was still sleeping peacefully. Max lifted his head from beside the bed, instantly alert despite his injuries. "Tommy, wake up," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice calm. "We need to go." "What's wrong?" Tommy rubbed his eyes and sat up. "Remember how we talked about having adventures? Well, we're going on one right now." Tommy looked at his mother's face and seemed to understand that this wasn't a fun adventure. "Is the bad man coming back?" "I don't know, baby, but we're not going to wait to find out." Sarah grabbed a bag and started throwing clothes into it. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold on to anything. 3 hours. Carl had been free for 3 hours. He could be anywhere by now. He could already be watching their house. "Sarah, are you still there?" Detective Rodriguez's voice came from the phone. "I'm packing. Where should we go?" "The police station. We have units on the way to your house, but don't wait for them. Leave now." Sarah helped Tommy get dressed and then looked at Max. The dog was trying to stand, but his injuries made it difficult. "Can Max come?" Tommy asked. "Of course he can," Sarah said, though she wasn't sure how they were going to move quickly with an injured dog. As if reading her thoughts, Max forced himself to his feet. He was limping badly, but he was mobile. More importantly, his eyes had that same alert, protective look they'd had in the woods. Sarah grabbed her car keys and headed for the garage. As she opened the door that connected the house to the garage, Max suddenly growled low in his throat. Sarah froze. "What is it, boy?" Max was staring at the garage door, his fur standing up along his spine. He took a careful step forward, then another, sniffing the air. That's when Sarah noticed it. The garage door was open about 2 inches. She always kept it closed and locked. "Tommy, go back in the house," Sarah whispered. "Right now." But before Tommy could move, a voice came from the shadows behind her car. "Hello, Sarah." Carl Brennan stepped out from behind the vehicle, and Sarah's heart stopped. He looked different than he had in the woods. Clean clothes, shaved face, neat hair. He looked like a normal person, which somehow made him even more terrifying. "How did you get out?" Sarah asked, backing toward the house with Tommy behind her. "People are always willing to help when you tell them the right story," Carl said calmly. "Amazing what a man can accomplish when everyone thinks he's reformed." Max positioned himself between Carl and the family, despite his injuries. The dog's growl was getting louder. "The police are on their way," Sarah said. "No, they're not." Carl held up a small device that looked like a cell phone jammer. "Radio communications in a 1/4-mile radius around your house are being blocked. It's amazing what you can buy online these days." Sarah felt her world collapsing. No one was coming to help them. No one even knew they were in danger. "What do you want?" she asked. "The same thing I wanted before, a family, specifically your family." Carl's pale eyes shifted to Tommy, who was clinging to his mother's leg. "The boy and I were just getting to know each other when we were so rudely interrupted." "He's just a child," Sarah said. "Children are honest. They don't lie or pretend. They show you who they really are." Carl took a step closer. "Your son is special, Sarah. He didn't cry or scream when I took him to the woods. He listened. He followed instructions. He has potential." Sarah felt sick. Carl was talking about her 5-year-old son like he was evaluating livestock. "Tommy, When I count to 3, I want you to run to the neighbor's house, Sarah whispered. Don't look back, don't stop, just run. What about you and Max? Tommy whispered back. We'll be right behind you, Sarah lied. 1, she said quietly. Carl laughed. He's not going anywhere, Sarah. None of you are. 2. Max gathered himself, preparing to attack despite his injuries. 3! Everything happened at once. Tommy ran for the door leading back into the house. Sarah grabbed a shovel from the garage wall and swung it at Carl. Max launched himself at the old man's legs, but Carl was ready for them. He sidestepped Sarah's swing and brought something up in his hand. A taser. The electrical shock hit Max mid-leap, and the brave dog crashed to the concrete floor, twitching and whimpering. Max! Tommy screamed from the doorway. Run! Sarah shouted, but Carl was already moving. He tackled Sarah to the ground, the taser pressed against her ribs. Call him back, or I'll give you the same treatment I gave the dog. Sarah could see Max trying to get up, his legs not working properly from the electrical shock. Tommy was standing in the doorway, torn between running for help and staying with his family. Tommy, please, Sarah gasped. Go get help. That's when something unexpected happened. Instead of running away or freezing with fear, Tommy walked back into the garage. Let my mom go, he said in his small, clear voice. Carl looked at the 5-year-old with something like admiration. You're brave, just like your father was. That's good. I like brave children. My dad was a police officer, Tommy said. He caught bad people like you. Your father is dead, Carl replied. But I'm very much alive, and I have plans for you and your mother. What kind of plans? Tommy asked. Sarah couldn't believe her son was having a conversation with the man who had kidnapped him, but Tommy seemed calm, focused, like he had a plan of his own. We're going to live in the woods together, Carl said, like a real family. I'll teach you things your mother never could. Survival skills, hunting, how to be strong. Will you hurt my mom? Tommy asked. Not if she cooperates. Tommy nodded seriously like he was considering Carl's offer. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He whistled. It was a sharp, piercing sound that seemed too loud to come from such a small child. Sarah had never heard Tommy whistle like that before, but Max had heard that whistle. It was the same signal Jake Morrison had used in the woods, the attack command. Despite the lingering effects of the taser, Max found the strength to surge forward one more time. This time, he didn't go for Carl's legs or arms. He went straight for the man's throat. Carl screamed and fell backward, dropping the taser as he tried to protect himself from 65 pounds of furious German shepherd. Max's police training had taken over completely. This wasn't just a dog defending his family. This was a trained attack dog, neutralizing a threat. Sarah rolled away and grabbed Tommy, pulling him toward the door. But Tommy wasn't done, surprising her. The police are here, he said calmly. Sarah looked around, confused. She didn't see any police cars or hear any sirens. I pressed the panic button on your phone while you were packing, Tommy explained. The lady on 911 told me to do that if the bad man came back. Carl managed to push Max away and staggered to his feet, blood streaming from scratches on his neck and face. But instead of trying to escape, he pulled out a knife, the same rusty blade he'd had in the woods. If I can't have you, he snarled, no one can. He raised the knife, aiming for Tommy. Sarah threw herself between the blade and her son just as the garage door exploded inward. 6 police officers in tactical gear poured through the opening, their weapons drawn. Drop the knife! Drop it now! Carl hesitated for a split second, looking around at the officers surrounding him. Then his pale eyes found Tommy one last time. You could have been special, he said sadly. I already am, Tommy replied. Carl dropped the knife and raised his hands. This time, when they handcuffed him, they used special restraints designed for violent prisoners. This time, there would be no escape. As the police led Carl away, he called out over his shoulder. This isn't over, Sarah. There are others like me. They know about you now. They know about the boy. The words sent ice through Sarah's veins, but before she could react, Detective Rodriguez was beside her. Don't listen to him, the detective said. He's trying to scare you. Carl Brennan worked alone. We've been investigating for days, and there's no evidence of any accomplices. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that Carl's final words were more than just a desperate threat. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in the town square watching as workers installed the bronze statue of Max at the entrance to the newly opened Max Memorial Trail. The statue was beautiful, showing Max in his prime, alert and proud, with a plaque that read, "Max Chen, K9 hero, he never let go." Tommy was playing nearby with his wooden sword, but he stayed close now. Not from fear, but from choice. The experience in the woods and garage had changed him, made him more aware of the world around him, but also more confident in his ability to handle whatever came next. Max was almost fully healed now, though he moved a little slower than before. The veterinarian said he would never be quite the same physically, but his spirit was as strong as ever. If anything, the confrontation with Carl had proven that Max still had all his protective instincts. "The trail opens officially next weekend," Jake Morrison said, walking up beside Sarah. "We're expecting people from 3 states to come walk it." "That's wonderful," Sarah said, watching workers put the finishing touches on the statue. "There's something else," Jake said quietly. "I got a call from the FBI this morning. They want to offer you and Tommy a place in witness protection." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "Why?" "They found more journals in Carl's cell. He'd been in contact with other prisoners, sharing information about you and Tommy. Detective Rodriguez was wrong. Carl didn't work entirely alone. He was part of a network." Sarah closed her eyes. She'd been hoping this nightmare was finally over. "But," Jake continued, "there's another option. The county sheriff's department is starting a new K9 unit. They want Max to help train the new dogs, and they want you to be the program coordinator. Me, I'm a nurse. You're also the person who survived Carl Brennan twice. You understand predators better than most law enforcement officers. And Tommy ... Jake looked at the little boy, who was now using his wooden sword to guard the Max statue. "Tommy has instincts that could save lives someday." Sarah thought about it. Witness protection meant running, hiding, always looking over her shoulder. But staying meant facing whatever came next head on, with Max beside them and the support of their community. "What do you think, Max?" she asked the dog. Max looked up at her with those intelligent dark eyes and wagged his tail once. A clear answer. "Tommy," Sarah called. "How would you like to help train police dogs?" Tommy's face lit up. "Can I teach them to be brave like Max?" "You can teach them to be heroes," Sarah said. 3 months later, the Max Chen K9 Training Center held its grand opening. Sarah had left her job at the hospital to run the program full-time. Tommy attended a special school for gifted children during the day and helped with dog training in the afternoons. Max, despite his age and injuries, had become the lead training dog. His ability to detect danger and protect his family had proven invaluable in teaching younger dogs the same skills. Carl Brennan died in prison 2 weeks after the training center opened. Official cause was a heart attack, but Sarah always wondered if his own evil had finally consumed him from the inside. The day of Carl's death, Sarah received a package with no return address. Inside was a small wooden carving of a dog that looked exactly like Max. There was no note, no explanation, just the carving. Tommy found her looking at it that evening. "Who sent it?" he asked. "I don't know," Sarah said. "Maybe someone who heard our story and wanted to say thank you. Or maybe," Tommy said thoughtfully, "it's from another family that Max helped save, and we just don't know about it yet." Sarah looked at her son, amazed as always by his wisdom. Maybe it is. That night, as Sarah tucked Tommy into bed, he asked the question she'd been dreading. "Mom, are there more bad people like Carl out there?" Sarah considered lying, but Tommy deserved the truth. Probably. But there are good people too, right? People like Jake and Dr. Harper and all the police officers who helped us? "Many more good people than bad people," Sarah said, "and dogs like Max." Dogs exactly like Max. Dogs we're training every day to protect families just like ours. Tommy nodded, satisfied. "Then we'll be okay?" "Yes," Sarah said, kissing his forehead. "We'll be okay." As she turned off the light, Tommy called out one more time. "Mom, I love you, and I love Max, and I love Dad, even though he's not here anymore." "He is here," Sarah said softly. "Every time Max protects us, Dad is here too." In the living room, Max lifted his head from his favorite blanket and looked toward Tommy's room. His tail wagged once, then he settled back down to sleep, still on guard, still protecting the family that had become his whole world. Outside, the Max Memorial Trail stretched into the woods that had once been a place of horror, but were now a place of healing. Families walked the trail every day, learning about the brave dog who had refused to let evil win. And somewhere in those same woods, new growth was pushing up through the forest floor, reaching toward the light, proving that even in the darkest places, life finds a way to begin again. The story of Max, Sarah, and Tommy became legendary in Millbrook and beyond. But for them, it wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about family, loyalty, and the unbreakable bond between a boy and his dog, who proved that love is stronger than fear and courage is stronger than evil. Max lived to be 14 years old, training dozens of police dogs and helping countless families stay safe. When he finally passed away peacefully in his sleep, the entire town came to his funeral. His grave marker, placed next to the memorial statue, reads simply, "Good boy." Tommy grew up to become a police officer, just like his father. He specialized in Canine units and never worked without a German Shepherd partner. Sarah continued running the training center until she retired, having trained over 200 police dogs who went on to save lives across the country and the woods. Behind their house, they remained peaceful, filled with families enjoying the Max Memorial Trail, children laughing and dogs playing. The darkness that had once lived there was gone forever, replaced by light, hope, and the memory of a hero who proved that sometimes the greatest courage comes in the smallest packages. The evil was defeated, the family was safe, and Max's legacy lived on in every dog he'd trained, every family he'd protected, and every child who learned that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are. What did you think of Tommy's incredible journey and Max's heroic sacrifice? Share this story with someone who needs to hear about the power of loyalty and courage. Like this story, if it touched your heart, subscribe for more incredible true stories, and let us know in the comments which part moved you the most. From wherever you're listening, thank you for being part of this amazing community.